Hello, and welcome to the Kathleen Spracklin podcast. I am a woman on a mission to assemble a cadre of writers, thinkers, and teachers who are transforming the world, one character at a time. And all it takes is a deep understanding of human motivation, why people do what they do, and the forces that drive them. To gain that understanding, I am mining the intersection of psychology, theology, and philosophy to make you a better writer. Welcome to episode 112. I am presenting a super short one tonight because while teaching a course where we were introducing the Zettelkasten, Victoria Crowder and I, who are team teaching a writing class, and we wanted to bring to those who are following us an understanding, at least at a rudimentary level, of the Zettelkasten so that they can use it in their writing. And I was searching for a way of explaining the numbering system. As you well know, I've been exploring the effortless numbering system, which I really like. And actually, one day next week, I will give you a tour of my Zettelkasten. I have more of my cards on that numbering system than any other. And also, but I didn't want to teach that method because it's far more common to use a 4-digit prefix. My original mentor in the Zettelkasten, Scott P. Shepper, who is probably the most noted master of the analog Zettelkasten, the antinet, had developed a system or presented a system that begins with a 4-digit prefix. And so most of us who have a physical Zettelkasten use some kind of a 4-digit prefix. And this kind of causes some consternation among people who tend to want to know, well, what's the right number to use and how do I find my number? Scott gave a suggestion using the wiki academic disciplines. But I have a slightly different take on it that is equally accurate and is far simpler. Now, as you'll recall, everyone should know this, that there are really only 3 rules for numbering cards. The first rule is every card gets a number. It doesn't go into the box until it has a number. The second rule is no 2 cards in your box can have the same number. And the third rule is if I pick this box up and threw it on the floor, I have to be able to put it right back in order using nothing but the number on the card. That's it. That's the rules. There is no more beyond that, right or wrong. After that, the correct answer is how well have you indexed what's on your cards? Because if you haven't indexed them, that numbering system isn't going to help you find what you're looking for. You've got to have a quality index. But we're not going to talk about indexes tonight. We're going to talk about another take on the 4-digit prefix that I think is about the easiest way to understand the 4-digit prefix that you can imagine. Well, this is one drawer of my Zettelkasten. Let's pretend that this is all of the main cards that I have. Okay, so what is the meaning of that 4-digit prefix? Well, if you want your card to go in the front of the box, then give it numbers 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, in that range. If you want your cards to go in the middle of the box, give it numbers in the range 4,000, 5,000, 6,000. If you want your card to go in the back of the box, give it numbers like 7,000, 8,000, 9,000. That's it. That, effectively speaking, that is all the numbers do. It's geography. Well, when you think about it, it can't be anything but, because you're sorting by the numbers. So if you're sorting by the numbers and you're going from low to high, the 1,000s are going to be up here and the 9,000s are going to be back there and the other ones are going to be in order. What else can it mean? That's the only thing it can mean. The fact that you put little labels on it and say my 1000s tend to mean this and whatever, and this tends to mean that, start out that way if you like, but Zettelkastens have a way of growing wherever you might least expect it. For example, my whole section on the Zettelkasten grew up in an area that was originally on linguistics. I'll tell you that story another night as to how it ended up that way. But you might be thinking you've got categories to start with, but you have nothing more than regions, because the new cards go next to the most closely related card in the Zettelkasten, and things can run away with themselves. We just saw an example a couple of nights ago when we talked about using the effortless numbering system to to encode the taxonomy of the character traits from my book, Writing with Emotion. And we saw a case, okay, we had 4D was the taxonomy of the character traits. Then when we came around and we wanted to add another card that came out of Character Strengths and Virtues, the Peterson and Seligman book, we found it was talking about the difference between a classification system and a taxonomy. Well, the most closely related card was that 4D, the card that was the taxonomy of the character traits. Well, if you start looking up, well, what does taxonomy mean in general, you'll find out that the most common use for it is the biological taxonomy system for the species. Genus, let's see, kingdom, phylum. How did that go? Kings play cards on fine green speckled velvet. Oh boy, oh boy. Kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, species, genus, and variety. Oh, how's that for a mnemonic sticking with you? We're going back a lot of years with that one. Who knows if they might have changed it by now. But the point is, that's taxonomy too. Now, suppose you had a beginning. You just had a small Zettelkasten. You've done the taxonomy of the character traits. You brought in that Peterson and Seligman card on taxonomy. Now you looked up the meaning of taxonomy and found out that it's pulling in biological taxonomy, and you're pulling in other authors in the biological systems. Now, if you ended up then with the next card being closely related to evolution, which is related to that taxonomy, you could suddenly find your whole theory of evolution growing up in the middle of the character traits. That's simply what happens with the Zettelkasten. And if you say, no, I can't put that there, it's not in the right category, you are totally missing the boat. Because by the time you start doing that, you might as well start using notebooks. Because if you're going to keep everything classified and all tied together, a commonplace notebook, it will do a better job of that than this bunch of file cards will. The reason you keep a Zettelkasten is you want that interplay and that interaction. And that only happens when things are allowed to land next to the card that is the most closely related to it. I'll go even one step further. When I am reading a book for formation, that means I'm reading it in depth and I just want to get all the goodies out of that book that I can possibly get. In Adler's terms, I'm reading it analytically and very deeply. I will take those cards and I could put them in a box and they could probably make a very tight clump because they're all about the same thing, the point the author's making. That's not what I want them to have to do. When I take one of my main notes, if it ties to anything else other than the subject that would put it right here, I tend to find that other key word and see if I can spread those cards as far and wide in my Zettelkasten as I can, because they become like seeds. It's like the dandelion when it reaches that puff ball and you go, and all the dandelions go every which way. That's what I want to do when I'm reading for formation. Because if I've read analytically for formation, that book's in my heart. I don't have to have it all clumped together. If I want it all clumped together, I'll use the bib cards. I'll use the bib cards that I took on the book. And they'll be over in that box, and I'll show you that box soon too, next few days. The bib cards keep them all together. I don't need to keep them all together in my Zettelkasten. In my Zettelkasten, I want them to fly far and wide. On the other hand, if I'm reading for information, I'm working on a specific topic, I want to pull different sources in on this piece of information, well, then I do want to try to keep them there because I want all these different sources to feed into this section so they can interact. Again, the purpose, so they can interact. Here, the clump, they might be going into the same clump, but it's this source and this source and this source and that source, all going into the same clump so they can interact. I've got a lot of cards from one source. I want them to go far and wide so they can interact. A Zettelkasten is a communication machine, and the only way that it does its communication is through the interacting cards. Because of this thing that I've talked about so many times, a card has an idea. You've captured an idea onto a card. That's not really a card because it's colored. You've captured an idea onto a card, and you filed it where it goes, and then another idea comes along and needs to go in that same spot, and suddenly the two ideas are alive side by side. And that is the joy, the excitement, and the place where you can get the most creative force from your Zettelkasten. So just think of it. If you use the 4-digit system, it's geography, and the best part of a 4-digit system, if you want to use them, is that it does help you control that geography. I'm not that big of a fan of geography. I'm more of I want them to scatter far and wide. So that's why I have this drawer is organized by 4-digit numbers, and the rest of them over there are the effortless numbering system. But I will give you more of a tour of that sometime next week. I promise. Okay, bye-bye. Thank you.